Awesome. My presentation is going to be a little different because I have a very different take on economic development. The group that I work with in Coeur D'Alene is called the Innovation Collective, and what we do there is slightly different than anything anyone else is doing, actually, to be honest with you. And I want to talk to you this morning about innovating or dying as it pertains to communities. It's a very, very interesting thing because all around the world right now, magic is really taking place. We're seeing crazy innovations happen that have never happened before, and it's things that in the past would have literally looked like black magic. I love the fact that my daughter lives in Stockholm, Sweden, and I see her face to face and talk to her every single day on something that's made out of lightning and sand. That's magic. And it's happening all around the world. We're seeing crazy things happen around the world that we never would have dreamed of, including things like, I got a short video here that I wanted to show you. I have a good friend, his name is Johnny Matheny. He's the world's first robo-human being. He has a prosthetic arm that he can control with his mind. It literally takes the thoughts of his mind and controls them. And he learned in the last year to play the piano using a prosthetic arm that he controls with his mind. He did this with Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory. Super cool guy, really cool. We just had him at one of our conferences. This is magic. I mean, think about that for a second. The second part of this is a bread robot. It's a company that we work with in Coeur d'Alene. They've literally revolutionized the bread industry. I can tell you about bread economics, stuff I didn't even know like years ago, about bread economics, and they're changing the way that bread is made in the United States. And this is a little picture of a Waymo car and how Waymo sees the world. Magic is taking place, and this new wave of technology is changing the way that we perceive the world. It's changing the way we communicate. It's changing all kinds of crazy stuff. And this new wave is absolutely taking on things that we never dreamed possible. We just recently had a big conference last weekend that we celebrate robotics and AI in Coeur d'Alene because we picked that as a technology vertical for our town. And we've said we're going to be the best damn technology around robotics and AI, and we're going to be a center of that, and our whole community is going to be involved in it. And so we have this big festival once a year where we celebrate that. And at the festival, we had a gentleman by the name of David Blodgett. David Blodgett is the chief scientist for Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory for their telepathic typing program. Now, they don't call it that. There's a technical name for it. But literally what they're doing, they're building ways for people to type using only their mind. They're doing this in conjunction with Facebook, and he came and he talked about this project that they're working on. Think about that. That is black magic. It's crazy. It's nonsense. Who would have ever thought that in our lifetimes, somebody would actually be working on the ability to think, and it would just type it into our computers? This new wave of technology is actually taking over many of the things that we've traditionally taken for granted, many of the different industries that we've taken for granted, and we're seeing new waves of technology change communication, work, thinking. All of it is being transformed. And it's a fantastic time to be alive. Oh my gosh, it is such a great time to be alive. But there's also a darker side of this technology. There's a darker side of the wave that's coming, and it's doing a disservice to many communities who are focusing on traditional ways of doing economic development. We have watched automation and AI in our lifetimes take away jobs. And according to different studies, depending on which one you listen to, up to 47% of jobs as we know them will be automated out of existence. If your title is driver, you need to be retrained. You're not going to have a job. And I know in rural Alaska, it may seem like that's a few years off. But let me tell you, I've watched autonomous vehicles in little Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, being used. If your title is accountant, guess what? I use QuickBooks. I use Intuit. I don't even need an accountant for basic things. And that's with simple web-based stuff. Imagine when AI gets a hold of that. If your title is judge, you may actually be out of a job in the next 10 to 15 years. Back east, there is a courtroom that has had an AI running next to a judge for the last 18 months. And that AI is now in 85% agreement with all of the rulings of the judge. And you have to ask yourself, would you rather have a judge who can be swayed by emotion, can be swayed by the facial movements that you have or the body language that you have, or would you rather have an impartial AI that just looks at the facts and makes a decision based on the facts? This wave is coming. And if we're not prepared for it, our communities are going to start suffering. Our communities are going to start hurting, and our communities are going to need to reinvent themselves. And we have a saying we like to use at Innovation Collective. This new wave is coming, and you have two options. You can either try to stand and hold the ground that you've been holding for the last several decades and watch this wave come at you. And I don't know if you've ever been in giant waves, like 6-foot tall waves at the beach, but the sand starts to erode out from underneath you, and you finally find yourself being plummeted by this giant wave, and you don't even know it hit you oftentimes. Even when you can see it coming, you can't even see it coming. Or you can do like we suggest, which is catch that wave, ride it, and have a little bit of fun. There's a new way to build economies. There's a new way to build cities. There's a new way to extract value from the earth. There's a new way to extract minerals. There's a new way to do all kinds of crazy things we've never thought of before. Did you know that this is a place where we extract things from the ground, right? We do that in Idaho too. We have a whole valley that's called the Silver Valley, and traditionally it was all built on mining. Did you know that the School of Mines in Colorado just started a major in asteroid mining? Now think about that for a second. There has to be new ways of doing things that we've never done before, or else we are going to find ourselves in a position where the wave is crashing around us and our communities are maybe not going to die, but they're going to be severely hurting. There is a new way to build economies, and it's something that we've been working on in a crazy little town in North Idaho. And this new way of building economies uses a non-traditional approach to building economies. We like to work with people first, not programs, not giant buildings, not like structure, and we like to work with people first. And we like to teach people to think nonsensically. Because every major technological advancement in the history of our world was nonsense when it was first introduced. Telepathic typing, that's crazy. David Bloggett's working on it. Electricity, taking the magic in the air and putting in people's houses. What about the ethers? Nonsense. But every major technological advancement that we've ever seen that changed the world came from nonsensical ideas. And we believe that when you can take communities of people and train them how to think nonsensically, and encourage them to think nonsensically, and put them in environments where they can learn to grow together, and then give them a position where they can predispose themselves to building companies on their own, you will start changing local economies. Local communities need to start reevaluating their resources and what they have on hand in the same way that a human being would do. If I dropped you on a desert island, the very first thing you would ask is, all right, what do I have? What are my resources? And the first thing that we need to do as local economies is start thinking about what are the resources that we have at hand. Because corporations are beginning to collapse. They're collapsing in on themselves when it comes to innovation. They don't have the ideas they used to. When was the last time a company came out with something you're like, holy cow? It's been a while. Megacities are starting to collapse. I just moved from Seattle, Washington, and I can tell you all kinds of things. You can watch the city, as successful as it's been, as rich as people are getting, as difficult as things are becoming, it's starting to collapse on itself. And these mega corporations and these mega cities are now looking outside of those corporations. They're looking outside of themselves. They're looking outside of the major cities and the mega cities because they need to find innovation in unlikely areas. If you think that Facebook doesn't know everything going on in Silicon Valley, Austin, Seattle, New York, you're crazy. There's nothing hidden there. There's no stealthy companies. The only things that are stealth are what they're putting in the news. But let me tell you about things that are going on in small towns like Coeur D'Alene, Idaho, or Butte, Montana, or Casper, Wyoming, or Anchorage. There are crazy people thinking nonsensical ideas and building technologies that are now becoming the foundation for major industries. And if you think I'm making this up, I can introduce you to multi-million-dollar companies that came out of Coeur d'Alene in the last 10 years. In fact, most of them in the last 5 years, who are just crazy dudes or women in their yards and in their garages going, I think I could build something. And nobody told them they couldn't. They didn't know they couldn't. All they didn't know how to do was to turn that into a real corporation. So we work with corporations, with individuals like that by taking an entire community and we team them up together and we build together. And we have a saying we like to use. We like to build wolves, not unicorns. Because see, wolves are scrappy. They run in packs. They take down things together. They work together. Unicorns are a mythical creature that doesn't exist. And you know what? It's very interesting because most wolves that are lone wolves die of malnutrition. And we believe that when we can start taking societies, communities, and building together really inclusive communities who want to work together, who want to build together, who've been encouraged to create and dream and do more for their economies and do more for themselves. And the democratization of information has made that possible. And when we encourage people to build, create, and do, we will change local economies, even like Anchorage. And I'll just leave you with this. Cities like Anchorage, cities like Coeur d'Alene, we can rest on our laurels. Tourism, healthcare, mineral extraction, we did the same thing there. Or we can start creating societies of people who've been encouraged and pushed to dream and build and do. Thanks for having me.